Every sword collector will tell you how ending up with a fake sword is kind of a rite of passage that most collectors go through eventually in their journey. Obviously, this is a step most people would rather avoid, but it still provides a lot of learning opportunity, and it's just something that happens when you end up buying a lot of swords over the course of years. So far, I felt that I had been able to avoid this issue quite well. It's obviously possible that swords you consider authentic may not be authentic, and that may come up years down the line, but so far none of the things I bought ever proved to be. And I thought it may be important or useful to share which characteristics of this sword actually identify it as a fake. But even more importantly, I think I want to go through some mindset issues or mistakes I made in the course of buying it that are correctable and can probably avoid a lot of mistakes moving forward, both for me and hopefully for you if you find yourself in the situation of buying a sword. And the reason why I thought I'd do this kind of self-analysis of being duped is that I've been watching a lot of videos recently of a YouTuber called Mentor Pilot, and he's a Swedish pilot and aircraft instructor, if I understand correctly, and he does a lot of in-depth analysis of, aviation incidents and accidents and tragedies. And one thing I really learned to appreciate watching these videos is the extreme detail and care that is put in the industry, I suppose, or at least in his videos, in analyzing what went wrong so that it can be avoided moving forward. And I think that on a way smaller scale, of course, this is an important attitude to have maybe even as sword collectors, because there are a lot of mistakes we make, and by educating ourselves, by analyzing why we ended up making certain mistakes, and by perhaps informing other collectors about these pitfalls, we can avoid other people falling into the same mistakes as they move forward. And perhaps before we dive into the specs of what makes this sword a fake, it's going to be a good idea to address first the context of how I ended up buying it and being fooled. So this was it came up at auction at a non-specialized auction house. So if you follow auctions, you'll know that there are specialized ones in antique arms and armor, and usually these end up having dedicated specialists that do the appraisal, and you're never 100% safe in the sense that there can be mistakes even in specialized auction houses, but there's someone with a more trained eye checking things out. And smaller, non-specialized auction houses may not have that expertise, so it may be easier for things to slip in. And this is, of course, assuming good faith on the part of the seller always. It's also obviously possible that there's a malicious intent to unload fake. It wasn't in this case, I would say, but yeah, you always have to keep your eye open for that as well. So I had my eye on a few things that were at a very good starting price and looked good enough. And there is perhaps the first mental mistake, is the good enough aspect. I mentioned, I think in other videos, how it's really easy to make mistakes buying at auction. And well, I fell into one mistake myself. So this, as you may see, is a British sword. You have the Victoria Regina cipher here. And British swords are something I am absolutely not familiar with. The only British sword I have, I think, is a 1786 pattern spadroon, and nothing else. So I have really no experience with British Victorian swords. And that is definitely a mistake. I kind of went into this auction with a little too of a lighthearted mindset, I think. There was a bunch of stuff that I knew and recognized, so I felt very comfortable bidding on and seeing the prices, and kind of maybe with a bit of cockiness as well. And in all of that stuff I was looking at and interested in, this also felt, okay, why not? It's a good starting price, I'll bid on that as well. Well, the second mistake, perhaps, was not doing due diligence. So even though you may assume, as I did, that, okay, it's a fairly common sword, it looks old enough, it's for a very good price, so I might as well bid on it, it cost nothing to do 10 minutes research, which in this case I skipped, and that research would have probably, I say, because we'll see another thing in a moment, that it would have probably avoided me buying this sword. Actually, I'll take it out of the scabbard because it's heavy and, well, we might as well look at it. So apart from these mindset mistakes which led me into buying this, which are perhaps being a bit superficial and complacent, I would say there are also some practical reasons that I think dive into the psychology of auctions. You may think auctions are a very transactional process, and in a sense they are, but there's a lot of psychology behind it. There's a lot of pressure in certain cases, and there's a lot of situational variation. Like, you need to have very clear objectives when you're going into an auction, because otherwise you really kind of can easily lose control. So I'll give you a few examples of what happened in this case. So the first thing, I think, is pricing. Pricing on auctions is often starts really low. So the object is usually estimated at an unrealistically low price. And this is to entice auction goers to make offers. And this kind of, the goal here is to kind of cause a little bit of a frenzy, I think, where people feel they have to bid because something is such a good deal. And once, it's a bit like with microtransactions in video games, I suppose, right? So once you pay that $1, €1 microtransaction, then the door is open for losing control and spending thousands. And it's the same with auctions. You get your first bid in, and then you're kind of in the game. You overbid, you bid once, you bid twice, you bid 3 times, suddenly you're one of the last 2. And is €100 going to make a huge difference when you're spending 5,000? Probably not. So you keep going in these small increments. This one obviously did not cost that amount. I would not be peacefully filming this if it had. So there's the aspect of price. This one was priced pretty low, actually very low, for what I thought it was, so I thought I'd give it a go. Another element, and it connects to this low price and to that bidding frenzy I mentioned, is that once you place a bid, there's no going back. What will happen, again connecting to the psychology of the event, is that lots of times, especially at auctions that aren't specialized in weapons, they may have a small range of military, or like, let's talk about swords. They may have 10, 15 swords at auction in auction that has maybe thousands of lots in a day. And so this means you have a very small window in which to make your offers on things you're interested in. And you already get into a mindset of being focused on the auction early on, because lots of times you don't know exactly when in the day the objects you want are going to go. So you end up maybe monitoring the auction for a long time. This kind of already brings you in a state of being heavily involved. And then you have this really small window, because each lot goes within a minute or less, where you have to place your bids and strategize which of the 10 swords you want to bid on, if any, or if all. And unless you're really lucky, you're not going to get everything you were expecting. So you're probably going to have a priority of an order of satisfaction. There are going to be swords that you really want, or that you're really hoping to get, swords that you can do with, and stuff that you don't really care for. And it sometimes happens that you get frustrated by missing out on things you really wanted at the start, let's say, of your window of opportunity. And each of one of these frustrations can end up lowering your bar a little. So let's say there's your dream sword going for auction, and you miss out on it by 1 bid. Each one of these little frustrations or these misses brings you closer to making a mistake, because suddenly you just want to overbid because you've spent hours at this auction. So you just want to come home with something. You don't want to have spent the whole day, plus the weeks perhaps researching stuff before, waiting for this auction to happen. It's a lot of investment, many times, time investment and energy. So you don't want to come home empty-handed, and the bar keeps lowering and lowering and lowering and lowering until you make a mistake and you bid on something that you didn't really want. And through this frustration, not only does your bar lower in terms of what you're willing to accept, but even the attention you're putting into the auction kind of wavers. So what happens in auctions many times is that there's a bit of a frenzy at the start, and something may go from €100 to 700, 800 in within 10 seconds, for example, and everyone's just bidding. And lots of times you kind of get in that mindset that since the auction has been going like this, you think, or that's your impression, everything is going, you don't want to miss out again, right? That's the kind of the big mistake you're making. So you end up, as soon as that lot becomes available for bidding, you end up clicking right away to ensure that you get the lowest bid possible and hopefully get on that winning streak, let's say. And well, in this case, that's what I did, and it ended up not being bid on by anyone else. So in the moment, I won't lie, I was really satisfied and happy. I thought, wow, this is a great deal, lucky me. But that should tell you something, looking at it retrospectively. The fact that nobody else bid on something should tell you that, well, you might want to not celebrate too early, let's say. But a thing that adds to that is that lots of times auction houses will not put detailed pictures, so you don't really have a lot of material to reference. So in this case, I saw this rusty scabbard. I saw the sword was not in the best shape, so I figured, okay, that's probably, it looks authentic, right? Who would fake a not rare sword and age it so that it's worth even less? It doesn't make sense. And the other thing is the pictures only had the sword within the scabbard. That's a calculated risk I took, and the mistake happened for the opposite reason I was thinking, though, because the risk I was taking in buying it without seeing the blade was that the blade may be ruined and the sword may be stuck in the scabbard. I did consider there may be something wrong with it, but my thought here was that it might be something to do with the blade being exceedingly damaged or in bad conditions. I never would have thought it was a fake. And this kind of is another perhaps issue, and it's maybe overthinking in some cases, or making assumptions. There's only one picture of the sword. Don't buy it. Don't do what I did in this case, which is, oh, okay, there's only one picture, but and it's probably in the scabbard because they don't want to show that it's slightly bent or it's rusty. And then in my head, I'm already going, oh, but I know how to clean swords. I do it all the time. So for me, it's not a problem. Oh, and people aren't offering because they can't see the blade. That makes perfect sense. All these assumptions happening on the back of one picture, whereas probably people weren't offering because they saw it was fake. So assumptions are another big issue you may run into. So anyway, to summarize, we have some mental mindset kind of aspects that determine how you go into buying a sword. And this is, as I mentioned, complacency, some superficiality, and maybe assumptions. And these you can work on, you should work on constantly for yourself, not only in buying swords, always for everything you do. And then there are the aspects of the psychology of auctions, which mean these are all things you need to be constantly, and maybe I'll make a separate video about it because there's really a lot that can be said about how auctions work and how to kind of set your mind to go through them successfully, I think. But anyway, and then there are these aspects. So with these out of the way, and the reasons why I myself made the mistake of buying a sword that was fake, let's look at actually what makes this sword a fake, so that hopefully this can be useful for any of you seeing another one of these to avoid it and make sure that the swords you buy always are swords that bring you happiness and satisfaction. Okay, so this is more or less what I saw from the picture in the auction, not much more than this. And what immediately popped to my eye, seeing this kind of thing, was, oh, okay, this is cool. This is a British sword. I don't know much about them. I could recognize it as being British because of the kind of cipher and stuff. I know that British swords offer, at least that I know. Oh, by the way, I still don't know much more about British swords. And what's maddening here is that so little, just a little bit of extra research would have probably already helped me avoid this. So it's really is not an issue of having to spend 20 years studying British swords to avoid a fake. It's an issue of doing 5 minutes research and not maybe bidding at auctions while lying on the couch, you know, just chilling. And so anyway, here are well, I'll show you first what I saw and what I considered, and then we'll look at the details. So I saw a damaged scabbard, not damaged, but you can obviously see this has realistic aging on it. This does not look like a fake. In fact, as I mentioned, I do think that the scabbard is probably original, or at least old. Then another thing that I noticed was this hanging chain, and much stupid as it may seem, because these are small details but they kind of make you think, you notice them when looking at things. I kind of thought, oh, that probably is some old chain. Someone must have had this hanging for decades, like one of those things that, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, I don't know, but that was a stupid consideration to make. The other thing I noticed was that the brass was in good condition, but definitely looked aged. It doesn't look new. And for me, maybe the selling point, what kind of got me to think, oh yeah, okay, was the damage on the grip. Because why on earth would someone fake a sword to then damage the grip and sell it? Like, it just felt this. You'll often see this kind of damage on actually authentic old antique swords, because it's a kind of damage that happens over time. And another thing I have to say is this: when I did some basic research, to be honest, I wasn't completely blinded in my stupidity here, but most swords don't have this. Most of these that I've seen. Oh, by the way, this is a British model. There are many of these, so it's, I think, a model 1845, but it takes from the model 1822, and then it moves into the model 1889, 92, if I'm not mistaken, and they were called Gothic hilted swords because of these, like, well, the elements you can see here of decoration, and they're characterized by this brass hilt with a royal cipher. So I did that basic research to understand this, and most of them don't have this, none actually have this, but since a lot of these were custom made or out of regulation, I thought, oh, that's cool, maybe I even get a really special one that has this extra decoration. Anyway, what I didn't look at, and now we can dive into what makes it fake, are a few things. Let me show you. First of all, if we look at the grip, this is maybe the thing that would have given it away the most to an expert, is that the grip is leather. It should be fish skin. After I've been told and I checked it out, I haven't seen any version of this made of leather. All the originals are fish skin. There may be some made of leather, some custom ones, I don't know. But this would have been a dead giveaway. Still remaining on the grip. Another thing that I learned is that this kind of bulge you see here, in some it's even more pronounced, but this bulge is another thing that's typical of fakes. Usually it would be straight, the grip. So yeah, that's something else to look at. Now, moving to the hilt here. To me, personally, without really knowing much, this does not look like a badly made cipher, although the measurements may be off, and you see some pictures of actually horrifically cast ciphers. This is maybe not a bad one, I would suggest. But another typical thing of fakes, it doesn't mean it's a fake, but all fakes have it, is the royal cipher is the VRI, so it would be Victoria Regina Imperatrix, so Victoria Queen Empress. And this comes after she became empress, so you have some swords that have VR, Victoria Regina. And while originals do have the I suppose, all fakes have the eye as well. So this is something else to take a look at. Now, I won't go into details of the cipher because I'm not experienced enough to be able to determine whether it's a good or bad version of it, but that's something to keep an eye out for. Now, moving to the blade. And here is also something that kind of tricked me. This, after I bought it, when I received it, you can actually see the blade has some staining. This is what you would normally see on old swords that maybe had some rust removed. It has a bunch of old oil, So it looked kind of legit as soon as I unsheathed it. But then there are a few more details here that we can look at in the blade to know some sort of these is fake. And they're especially down here towards the ricasso. One is this proof mark. So as soon as I unsheathed the sword, I was like, oh, cool. I finally have a sword with this kind of brass proof mark. It's the first one I held. Well, turns out that this kind of proofed, like with, you can see it's written, you can see, well, this kind of configuration of the mark, because there are many different versions, but this proved like this, with a T in the middle, is present on all fakes. I don't know if it means it's fake, like it could be possible that even originals do have this kind of mark, but again, it's one of those things that it doesn't determine it being fake, but all fakes have this proof mark. And one last thing is, there in originals, you would normally have a shoulder between the end of the ricasso here and the start of the fuller. And all the fakes, again, all the analyzed fakes, at least in this article I found, which I think I'll link in the comments if I find it again, all of these kind of just have this smooth transition from the ricasso into the fuller. So none of these elements by themselves perhaps say that this is fake, but what they do say altogether is that all fakes have all of these elements present. So if I had just done that basic research, I would not be holding a fake today. So anyway, I hope this was useful. Someone's pain is someone else's gain, I suppose. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video with an original, and bye.